Hey everyone, Chris Carter here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. We take a lot more of your questions, specifically a lot of them on the NFL draft, but some on the Steelers offense as well. We got the Locked On Steelers podcast. It's the Friday episode. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. Thank you for making us your first listen every day, because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay tuned for the Armada Player of the Week later in the show. All right, Steelers fans, we got a lot more of your questions. I got to say, I appreciate everyone who calls into our call-in line. Again, that's 412-223-6644. So many of y'all call in. I was looking at the numbers. If I did two calls a segment every show until the NFL draft, I would not get through all of the calls that I have received. That is how many calls I am getting all the time. And that is not a complaint. That is an acknowledgement that you guys are passionate. You guys, and a lot of these questions, they make sense. And you guys are following the rules. I thank you so much, because it's awesome to hear this many different people from all across the country, not just the country, all across the world, because we get international phone calls as well, people contributing to this. So it's awesome to hear those questions. But one thing that I thought I wanted to harp on for this Friday episode, because I'm going to reveal this eventually. If you're watching this, you know that we every year we do the Locked On NFL draft, Locked On NFL like team draft, where we do a long show about who each of us picked in a giant mock draft. And so behind the scenes, off camera, we do this every year, where every host of every team makes a pick in the mock draft, and they do a mock draft that way, where there's even trades allowed. I always pick for the Steelers. And this year, I made my pick Kenneth Grant at 21st overall. He fell to me in the mock draft, and he is the guy. He makes the most sense for the Pittsburgh Steelers. From what I understand, the Steelers, they love this guy. They think that he fits everything that they want. He can take on double teams. He's athletic. He's a tryhard. He puts every 110% into everything that he does. He also, but at the same time, he's extremely talented. He'll stuff the run. He'll learn how to be a better pass rusher. He's already shown good signs of that. They really like this guy. They also really like Derrick Harmon, but Kenneth Grant to me is still the number one priority. If you can get him in the first round at 21, he's the perfect fit for what they're doing. Now, other teams I think do like him as well, so there's a chance he gets taken by then. So we're going to lead off this show with some questions about Kenneth Grant that I thought were really good questions from some of you guys. Let's kick it off with Mike Will. Mike Will made it out in Fayetteville, North Carolina.
Hello, Chris. This is Mike Will from Fayetteville, North Carolina. And if Kenneth Grant is there still at 21, there's no other selection. My thinking is, since Casey Hampton left, the defense has not been what it needed to be. Until we get a force up the middle that demands double teams, the potential of the defense will not be unlocked. T.J. Watt's talent, Alex Highsmith's talent, Minka Fitzpatrick's talent will be wasted away. Get somebody that can demand double teams. That way you can pretty much stay in your base defense and just substitute linebackers and safeties as necessary. Dominate on defense. You seemingly got everything you need on offense minus a running back and quarterback. Kenneth Grant at number 21, if he's available.
So I hear you right there. First of all, thank you, Mike. Mike Will made it. He calls in 412-223-6644. Leave your name, keep your question under a minute, and let us know where you're from. But Mike, it's funny you bring up Casey Hampton, because Casey Hampton revolutionized the Steelers defense with Bill Cowher. When they picked him in 2000, he instantly put himself in that defense, and he was a huge part of what made that 2000s defense just legendary, both in the Cowher and Tomlin eras. But I think there's another person that we need to not overlook, that kind of is the person that the Steelers haven't replaced, and that's Stephon Tuitt. And I think I've said this before. I'm going to say it again. The loss of Stephon Tuitt is much larger than people want to acknowledge to the Steelers organization than anything else. And yes, it's been 5 years. His last season was 2020, so I guess 4 seasons. But it's been 4 whole seasons since then, and they haven't found a good replacement for him, and that is a big part of the problem. And like you're saying, with no Stephon Tuitt, the replacement, they have not had another dominant force in the middle that's been able to pair with Cam Hayward, where when they were together, they opened everything up. They made things easier for Bud Dupree. They made things easier for TJ Watt, Minka Fitzpatrick. And in fact, the last time Stephon Tuitt was healthy, the Steelers had the number 3 defense in the NFL, not just in yards, but also in points. And that is what they were missing. And what happened at the end of the season? Stephon Tuitt got hurt, wasn't able to be like himself. He eventually retired after that. But when he came off the field, but Dupree got hurt, that's when you saw that defense that was playing lights out for most of the season fall apart at the end of the year. Injuries, and on top of the fact that was an old team, and many people also forget that not only did they have their bye week removed, they had to do the 3 games in 8 days thing when the Commanders or whoever it was, the Ravens, messed up their COVID stuff. Long story short, a lot of bogus stuff happened to that team. But one of the biggest things I think is overlooked is that they never replaced Stephon Tuitt. And whereas Kenneth Grant isn't a Tuitt type, I think that's actually a lot closer to. I think that there's Derrick Harmon. He has a lot of elements there because of his length. But Kenneth Grant is a bulldozer, and if you put him in the middle of this line next to Cam Hayward, and he works out in a quick fashion, and is an instant hit with Keanu Benton, that you could have your powerhouse in the middle of the defensive line. And that's why I've been really big on banging the drum for Kenneth Grant, and will continue to do so until draft day. And again, he might get picked before the Steelers even get a chance. In fact, on the Locked On NFL podcast that we do, Wig does, Tony Wiggins for Locked On Jaguars. He hosts the Thursday afternoon shows. I do those with him. And when we were doing them, he talked about, hey, if the Jaguars trade back, they'd love to get Kenneth Grant, but just not, with the 5th overall pick or whatever pick that they have. And I was like, hey, buddy, I get it. He's that likable of a player. But someone else brought up a really good question that I wanted to include in this first segment, and it's about the positioning of where guys are in this draft class and what the value would be if you waited on defensive tackle versus other positions. This one's Corey from Pittsburgh calling.
Hey, Chris, love the show. I had a quick 2-part question. My question was, my name is Corey Brown. My question is the talent gap between Kenneth Grant and Alfred Collins, or possibly a Deion Walker, is that talent gap bigger than the talent gap between Omarion Hampton, Trayvon Henderson, or DJ Givens? Because we're not going to be able to get one of those premium running backs, but we can possibly get a nose tackle later on in the draft, maybe that 3rd round. Thank you so much.
That's a good question, Corey, and thank you so much for calling. We appreciate all the calls here. To answer your question plainly, yes, I do think that the space between an Alfred Collins and a Kenneth Grant is larger than that. In fact, I'm going to do my top 100 big board for Monday. That's going to be coming out. It's done. It's in the Post-Gazette where it's going to publish. I wanted to publish it there before we talked about it on here. But one thing that I will note in it is that when I put this list together, it's always my rankings of where guys fit, where I rank guys as far as their importance to what the Steelers could use in the big board, and how I see them in a top 100 as far as who the Steelers should prioritize when and where in the draft process. And for me, I rank Kenneth Grant as high as 12th because I think he is that good of a defensive tackle prospect in this draft class. And granted, part of that's also because there's a lot of offensive tackles that I just kind of rate lower because I don't think that they're as important to the Steelers right now. But point being, Kenneth Grant is that guy. I rank the Alfred Collinses that if you skip past Tyleik Williams and those other guys that would be late first rounds, early 2nd round type of guys, guys that wouldn't be available in the 3rd round. Those guys rank in the 70s. If you skip past Omarion Hampton and Ashton Jeanty, the next guys in as far as running back, Quinshon Judkins, Caleb Johnson, DJ Giddens, RJ, those guys, a lot of those guys are in the 50s. When I'm looking at my list right now, Caleb Johnson's my 52nd player, Dylan Sampson's my 51st player. There's plenty of guys that I think that's the 2nd tier of running backs. And in fact, I think actually Ashton Jeanty's kind of the first tier, and then Harmon is the second tier. But like that group of running backs that you'll be able to access, I think is so much better than that next group of defensive tackles. Whereas I think if you get an Alfred Collins or Deion Walker, I think you'll get a solid player, but you will miss out on a potential star talent. I think, however, though, if you get a Dylan Sampson or a Caleb Johnson or a Quinshon Judkins, you're getting a really good playmaker. Like, I don't think these guys are going to be some average running backs that'll just be like, oh, okay, well, we still need to go get another running back. No, I think those guys are starter potential running backs right there. I don't think the same thing about Alfred Collins. I think he could turn into a starting defensive tackle, but the Steelers don't need just a starting defensive tackle. They need a guy who looks like he's going to take over the middle of the defense. And that's what I think a Kenneth Grant pick can do for this defense. And if they get it right and they get him and he turns out to be that, it's going to solve so many problems in this defense, both in the immediate term and in the long term for what they need to do. So to answer your question, yes, I think that whereas this is a deep defensive tackle class as well, I do think like again, Deion Walker, actually I don't even have Deion Walker in my top 100 anymore because just things didn't work out that way. But like if you went and got an Alfred Collins to double up a defensive tackle, in this draft class, I think that'd be fine. I'm also a big fan of Aeneas Peebles out of Virginia Tech. Like there's guys in the later part of this draft class, but those guys don't propose to be dominant central forces to stuff the run and then complete your defensive front with Watt, Highsmith, Hayward, and then this extra player and Benton to make it kind of like what our first caller Mike Will was talking about it with saying like, hey, like when you have that extra guy on the field, it makes all those other jobs so much easier. That's why I think getting that defensive tackle prospect is that much of a difference maker in doing so, and why I continue to bang that drum. But hey, we got lots of questions still for this. We got some development questions on George Pickens, other questions about other quarterbacks the Steelers could be looking at. We'll talk about all that here on the Locked On Steelers podcast as we continue to take your calls on the Steelers and their NFL draft plans. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you this show is brought to you by Nissan. The Armada Player of the Week is brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, we take a look at our draft prospects to pick one guy that stands apart. The guy we believe showcased the strength and power needed to push the Steelers forward as we look ahead to next season. This week's Armada and clear-cut Player of the Week is Oregon defensive tackle Derrick Harmon. Now, as you remember, last week's player was Kenneth Grant because he is my top prospect that would be a great fit for the Steelers. But right behind him is Derrick Harmon. The Steelers have benefited from Cam Hayward for the past 15 years, and Harmon projects to be the closest player matching him as far as size, skills coming out of college in this draft class. He takes on the heavy duty to split double teams, just like the Nissan Armada conquers the road with capability and confidence. When it comes to the Nissan Armada, they say go forth and conquer, and that's exactly what I think Derrick Harmon can help the Steelers do with their defense. It's clear that our player of the week is out here ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada or any of their outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We've been entertaining more and more questions about George Pickens because I think there is a reasonable amount of this fan base that still believes that George Pickens can be the guy and it's going to be tough to be the guy though with DK Metcalf getting the contract that he did from the Pittsburgh Steelers. However, there's some people out there that again think that, hey, George Pickens' future with the Steelers isn't over. And as I talked about on yesterday's show, I think that there is a road for him to come back, but part of it needs to be completing his game. And Jay from Charleston, South Carolina, I thought that, hey, what would it take to do that? Can he do that? Here's Jay.
Hey, Chris, what's up, bro? It's Dre calling from Charleston, South Carolina. Hey, I got a question. I think I've already called and asked this, but I'm going to ask it again because we saw GP training with the route guy. Of course, DJ was there. That's his trainer. But do you see GP becoming more of a well-rounded receiver, working on his route running and just the ability to get separation and get open? Considering we got DK, he can definitely be a down the field threat. But do you think if GP develops that talent of being able to separate, is it really a necessity that we need to draft a receiver when we already have two slot guys in Roman and Calvin? I just want to know your thoughts. Hopefully you get back to me, and thank you for taking my call.
Thank you for calling, Jay. As always, it's 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep your question under a minute. We'll try to get your question on the show. Jay, great question. And also great observation on George Pickens working with the route god receivers coach. He helps Deontay Johnson for all the Deontay Johnson problems that are there. Deontay Johnson is an elite route runner, at least was when he was with the Pittsburgh Steelers. His ability to create separation was very unique and is what built his entire career. Let me say this. There was at one point we were doing shows when Pickens and Johnson were going to be the Steelers wide receivers. I think it was for the 2023 season, because it was the last year they had Deontay Johnson. And leading into it, there's a guy who does a channel called Reception Perception, where he calculates separation, he calculates route running and the successes of it, and there's also like ESPN they do, but all of them concluded these few things. Deontay Johnson was the best at getting separation in the NFL at the time, when they were completely like looking at who ran the sharpest routes to get the most separation from receivers. But the guy who had one of the worst separation rates was George Pickens, but he had the best contested catch rate, and that's what made those two guys a unique sort of Batman and Batman. We'll have you about how they went about it. They kind of went different ways in how they were star players and how they were dangerous as receivers. But if George Pickens is able to add getting real separation to his game, being a much sharper, more detailed route runner, he has the potential to be a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL. Maybe even top 3. And I'm not kidding when I say this. George Pickens has a lot of the raw tools. He has the speed. He has the linkiness, that he has that weird acrobatic catch sense that he just pulls those off. We've seen that. His hands are insane. He's able to go up and pinpoint a football. He has the attitude to go win those battles, and he can dust people real quickly. If he's able to add the ability to fight you off without having to push off of you, and to get separation over the middle part of the field, that's going to be the thing that gets back to, I apologize, I forgot who called on yesterday's show. But when they asked, could George Pickens stick around for the long term? This is the stuff you would have to do. If he becomes an elite route runner, then the Steelers are in a position where it's like, okay, you know what? If we're getting a rookie quarterback next year, let's give him 2 star receivers, DK Metcalf and George Pickens, and both these guys. And we're just going to rock out with this for the next 4 years, and we're just going to see where this goes. And that's what it would take. To me, it's the sharp route running. For the biggest critics of George Pickens, and myself here, I've been a person, I think that George Pickens can be a great wide receiver if he puts it all together, but I've also acknowledged his shortcomings. One of the biggest things that he doesn't do sometimes is when he's not involved in a play, or he doesn't feel like he's going to get, sometimes he will slack off. Sometimes he won't run his route as hard as he can every single time. And even when he does run his route as hard as he can, the way he gets open isn't always the most detailed in how he gets his footwork, the things that the little things that you do to try to sell how it's to sell certain parts of your route, to get corners to not be able to guess where you're going. That stuff takes so much time and effort to build. It is a grind to become that kind of a player. It's why oftentimes guys that don't have blazing speed or insane height, that's how they get good in the NFL. That's what Antonio Brown did. Antonio Brown wasn't the fastest in the world. He wasn't tall, but you know what he did? He became an elite route runner. He used his explosiveness and how to build that. And if George Pickens, he doesn't have to be the best route runner in the league, but if he becomes a good route runner at getting separation and using his footwork to sell corners and get them to be confused about which way he's going, he is going to become a different force in the NFL than he already has been. And that's saying something, because George Pickens is already a force in the NFL. So to answer your question, Jay, yes, if he puts that together, it changes everything. Can he put it together? He has to prove that himself. That's only a path that he can walk. I always like to think the best of players and say, and I don't like to think the best of players. I like to give the players the benefit of the doubt that they can prove people wrong and be the player that they see themselves being, and give them the chance to be that. Will George Pickens be that? We don't know. But I think that he has shown the tools all around that if he added, sharp route running as a tool to his skill set, he would become a force that defenses would not want to have to face week in and week out. And again, that would be a force across from DK Metcalf. That's already a problem. And I think that those two, again, you're setting up the potential for them to be the weapons of past destruction, which, by the way, we're doing that. TM, I'm putting my trademark on. Everyone takes that. You remember they took it from Chris Carter in the Locked On Steelers podcast. I've been saying that for like a month now, the weapons of past destruction. Anyways, let's get to some more questions here. This one's about a player that's not a Steeler that some people think maybe could you go tile this guy, see if he would be a Steeler. Here's Aaron from Newark, New Jersey.
Hey, Chris, this is Aaron from Newark, New Jersey. I'm calling in to ask about something that I've seen online. I've seen a proposed trade to trade back our 21st pick or whatever our first round pick is to the Colts for their second round pick and Anthony Richardson. And the reason was that, the quarterback room over there is kind of like they have guys and then they were down on Anthony Richardson. To me, he fits, what Arthur Smith wants to do, in terms of like the more Justin Fields facing play calling rather than the Russell Wilson facing play calling. He's mobile, strong arm guy. I think with not having, with two arguably number one receivers on the roster in George Pickens and DK Metcalf, I think he can do some things in the black and gold, man. But let me know what you think of the show. Listen to it every morning. Have a good one.
Thank you for your question, Aaron. As always, 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep your question under a minute. I wanted to listen. I think that it's always interesting when people are like, "Hey, we talked about this on yesterday's show, where people try to get into the reclamation, projects, right? Like they try to see, hey, could like that's what everyone was hoping for Justin Fields. Could the Steelers maybe figure out what Justin Fields really needed to be?" And to be a franchise quarterback, and it didn't work out because he's gone somewhere else now. But look, I get that. I get the want to try to figure that out. But in my opinion, like I don't see it with Anthony Richardson, particularly for a specific reason. When Anthony Richardson took himself off the field, I believe it was a 23-20 loss. Which team did they play? I think it was the Texans. There was a game where he took himself off the field. He admitted he was tired. There's been questions about his commitment to the game. Whenever I see anything like that, as much as his raw speed, size, arm strength, all that stuff, I mean, it makes him jump off the board. Some people say he could be the most athletic quarterback that the NFL may have ever seen coming out of the draft class. None of that matters when you got questions about the work ethic and about the commitment and about, will he fight through the moment. He took himself out of a game because he was tired. I mean, and he admitted this, like he said it after the game. And look, yes, he's 6'4", ideal quarterback height. Ran a 4.43, very fast, extremely fast, explosive with the way that he jumped. Has a cannon of an arm. He can whip it, but he didn't put it together in the Colts offense just yet. And 8 touchdowns to 12 interceptions last year. And again, I can get past that, but I can't get past the questions about his effort and about his commitment, and then wondering if he's fully invested. Those type of things, I don't know about. If you trade for Anthony Richardson, it would not be for giving up a first round pick for a second round pick. It would be more for like giving up, in my opinion, at this point, just through what we've seen from him, and maybe he'll prove me wrong. As I said, I'm welcome to being proven wrong by athletes. I think that's an awesome part of the story, is when athletes overcome adversity and beat the odds. But I wouldn't be taking that bet. If I was to do a trade back, it would be more of like a third for a fourth than a first for a second. Like it would that would be the range that I would do that for, and give that a shot for. So I'm not big on Anthony Richardson, and that's primarily why. I know there's some people out there still think that he could be the guy. I would need to see it before I believe it. But We still got other questions here, and particularly about the quarterback position. We'll get to those next here, including whether or not the Steelers can find their Ryan Tannehill for the Arthur Smith offense like he was for the Titans years ago. Is that player already on the Steelers roster? Is that a player that the Steelers could add? We'll talk about that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our show here today. Let's take it to Julio out in Cleveland, Ohio. Julio, take it away.
Hey, Chris. This is Julio from Cleveland, Ohio. With all this Aaron Rodgers saga going on, I'm starting to remember that Ryan Tannehill had his best years under Arthur Smith's offense. He really made him into a star, and kind of seeing similarities between him and Mason, and it's kind of making me excited. It kind of makes me want us to stick with Mason Rudolph and, just draft a quarterback in the 4th or 5th round. We can somehow land Jalen Milroe or Will Howard. I'd be pretty much happy with that. What do you think about that? Thank you. Enjoy your show. Listen to it every morning. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you, Julio. Appreciate you calling in. As always, you can call in like Julio did and all of our guests, 412-223-6644. So here's my thing on the Ryan Tannehill situation, because I was one of the people that was saying last year, hey, Arthur Smith, Ryan Tannehill, you could get your Tannehill type, and maybe Russell Wilson could be that. Look, maybe you could find it, but one thing, the thing that I always remind people, and I argue this with people way back then when this was going down and Tannehill was going off in the Titans offense. Tannehill was part of the equation, but the thing that made that offense go was Derrick Henry was just evil, and that offensive line was creating space. And then Tannehill was a good puzzle piece to place in that and say, hey, I'll hit on these things. The Steelers could, see Mason Rudolph be the piece of that puzzle, but the problem is they haven't developed that run game. And I don't know if there's a Derrick Henry on this roster right now. I think Jaylen Warren could be a dangerous man, but is he Derrick Henry? No. Could they find a superstar running back in this draft class? Maybe. Maybe if they hit on a Sampson, a Johnson, maybe if one of these guys that we're talking about that in this deep running back class is one of those guys that could be a superstar. Maybe if Ashton Jeanty falls to him, and that's the situation there. Then you could be getting into Ryan Tannehill situations. But the Steelers offense, and particularly their run game, needs to develop before that can happen. Because again, you look at Ryan Tannehill's some of those best years under Arthur Smith, 2019 and 2020. He had 22 touchdowns to 6 interceptions in 2019, which he wasn't doing all the heavy lifting. But again, his efficiency numbers were extremely high. In fact, he led the NFL that season in yards per attempt with 9.6. I think it was air yards per attempt with 10.1 and yards per completion with 13.6. And he had the highest passer rating in the NFL of 117.5. Could the Steelers just get that out of Mason Rudolph? I don't know if they would get it like that, but if they had a dominant run game, that's what sets it all up. So that's why I think that right now they have Arthur Smith, is because they knew hey, they're not going to find the quarterback answer that they really want right now until they get to that next year draft, which again, I think that's ultimately what the Steelers are trying to get to right now, is to try to get through this current era, get to the 2026 quarterback draft where there's a potential of several guys that could be first round franchise quarterback type prospects to give them a lot of different chances to strike it and get it right in that first round. If they hit on that year, then you want to have that system in place that's easier for a Mason Rudolph, for an old man Aaron Rodgers, for anybody that they bring into the offense to be that. Now, again, I don't think if Aaron Rodgers wants to come to the Pittsburgh Steelers and he wants to be that guy for you, I don't think there's a problem with that. I think that'd be fine. And again, 1 year deal, not that expensive, doesn't have a long-term impact on you. That's fine. But again, Mason Rudolph, could he do that? I don't think that the drop off would be catastrophic. I think that he's shown that he can be a solid, fill-in backup quarterback, but that's what he is. That's who Mason Rudolph is. And I don't think you want to commit to that long-term. So I don't think he would be Ryan Tannehill per se. I think that if the Steelers had a really good run game that developed, he could play off of it very well, and he could give you options to win. And especially with DK Metcalf and George Pickens, if those guys are winning more one-on-ones, it'll make the job a lot easier. So to answer your question, Julio, I don't think that Mason Rudolph could just turn it up and throw 33 touchdowns and 7 interceptions next season. But I do think that he can be part of a puzzle that they put together to try to make the offense a more balanced attack unit. And he has shown he can hit some big throws. He can hit some throws downfield. He can, make the right reads and give you chances. And I think that's all the Steelers can ask of a quarterback like Mason Rudolph, who has bounced around the league now as a backup and come right back. So that's that question there. We got one more question about a quarterback in this draft class, a quarterback that I really don't talk about a lot, but here's Raul from Amarillo, Texas.
Hello, Chris. This is Raul from Amarillo, Texas. So I know a lot of people have been talking about how Jackson Dart might be one of the quarterbacks that we pick up, but obviously in the third round. So I was thinking, what about, since no one's been talking about him, what about Dillon Gabriel from Oregon? I know that he'll probably be available in the third or the fourth round. So if Jackson Dart and Ewers are off the board, what do you think the Steelers would do if Dillon Gabriel is still on the table? Thank you for listening and love the show. Bye.
Now, I listen, and thank you, Raul, for the question. I think it's always, as always, you can call 412-223-6644. I've entertained a lot of quarterbacks. There's a reason I've passed over Dillon Gabriel. Part of it is because I really think that a lot of what he did well in the NFL was be an older quarterback who could take advantage of some things with a really talented roster at Oregon. I think that he has the wherewithal. I think that his headspace can be right to make good decisions when given the opportunity, not flustered. But when I look at his tape and everything, there's not a lot of things that I see him do at an elite level. There's not a lot of tools that I say, ooh, that'll transfer over nicely to the elite, to the NFL, to make him a dangerous franchise quarterback, or even one of the better backup quarterback options in this draft class. But he's 6 foot, so he's shorter at the quarterback position. He doesn't have elite arm strength. He doesn't have great speed. I think that he thinks through things really quickly at the line. That's a really good thing, but you need more than that. And that's why I'm not on the Dillon Gabriel train. Maybe some people are, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe he'll prove me wrong. But I am not on the Dillon Gabriel train as far as that. I think there's a reason why you don't hear his name as much with the Steelers mock drafts and what they might want with him there. To me, Dillon Gabriel, I would not be touching him unless a lot of other guys are gone. When you look at quarterback like Tyler Shuck, Jalen Milroe, Jackson, like all those guys, they would be long before Dillon Gabriel in this. And I even put Kyle McCord out of Syracuse over Dillon Gabriel just for the measurables and the things that I've seen. So no, I don't think the Steelers should be taking a look at him there. If they don't pick a quarterback and they're in round 5 and round 6 or whatever, and they're thinking like, oh man, well we missed out on those guys, so I guess then that's how they'll get him if they get him. But they're not going all out for him. Dillon Gabriel, to me, is not that kind of a quarterback prospect, and I think that there's a lot of NFL scouts that would share that opinion. But that's our show today here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Thanks so much for everyone who's calling into the show at 412-223-6644. Again, leave your name, leave your name, where you're from. Give you a question under a minute. We'll be able to try to get it on the show. Thanks again to everyone who's been calling in. I'm Chris Carter. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, all the social media, same handle everywhere at Carter Critiques. You can read my work in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. You can find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every Monday through Friday, breaking down your Pittsburgh Steelers on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Back on Monday with more on your Steelers. We'll have hopefully my top 100 list ready to go, and maybe even my newest mock drafts all here on that. Be sure to look out for my mock draft Monday post, where you can post your mock drafts under my post that go out throughout the weekend, and that'll set you up with the opportunity to get your picks talked about on the show. We'll see you Monday here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.